Hi everyone, and welcome to this Adobe workshop where we're going to be looking at the IK tool, the inverse kinematics tool, which, if you've seen the bone tool in cs4, the new tool, allows you to create puppets and animations quite simply. To do this, you need to start up an ActionScript 3 project. It's only an ActionScript 3 tool. You can't use it in ActionScript 2, which is a real shame. However, I've started up an ActionScript 3 file here, and if you look at my properties window over on the side, I've created a size of 900 by 600, and I've got my blank stage here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a puppet of myself, and if you're one of my students in the class, you can look on Moodle and find pictures of your faces as well, and I want you to use Photoshop to cut those out, save them as a PNG with no background, and then bring them into Flash. I've got my picture on the side here, which I'm just going to drag in. You could use File and Import if you wanted to as well. Here comes my face. Now, I've already brought it in a minute ago, so it's asking me if I want to replace it, but yours won't. There's my face. Fantastic, eh? And I'm going to call this layer here Head. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw some body parts. So we're going to need a body first of all. So I'm going to use the line tool on the red there, and perhaps have a bit of a lighter red on the inside. And if I go to the line tool, I've got a stroke of 4.85. It doesn't really matter what stroke you've got. And what I want you to do is to create a new layer and draw a body like this. So I've got a bit of a neck there, shoulder, then let's go straight down, across, up, and back, and that'll do for my body. And then I'm just going to fill it using the paint bucket tool by clicking inside of it. If yours doesn't fill, remember that down here, this is the fill options, and you might not be able to see it. See how I can click and it's not filling? It's got don't close gaps on it, okay? And there might be some small gaps there which we can't see. If you just put it straight to don't close to close large gaps and click on it, it'll fill the image for you. So that's the body, and each of these body parts we make, I want you to turn into a movie clip. So I've gone back to the arrow tool, I double click, because if I single click it doesn't select the stroke, so I double click on it to select the stroke as well. Right click, convert to symbol, and I'm going to make that a movie clip, and I'm going to call this one body. Oh, body 2. I've already got one in the library from when I was just doing a test earlier. Okay, so body, there you go. You can see some of the little dots as I move it around that were the gaps. I'll just delete those, but you don't have to worry about those. Okay, so that's the body. Then we're going to draw 3 parts of the arm. We're going to draw the upper arm, the lower arm, and the hand. So we're not going to be too accurate with these. I'm going to get my line tool again, and I'm going to draw it on the same layer this time. I'm going to draw an arm out here. So this is the upper arm. 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 lines. Then I'm going to fill it. Then what I'm going to do is just bend, and notice how the arrow changes from this square little box underneath it to this little bendy line, and I'm just going to bend it out into shape a little bit. So that's going to be my upper arm, which I'm going to double click on, right click, convert to symbol. It's already a movie clip. Now I'm just going to call this arm. It doesn't matter what you call this, okay? Because what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate it by holding down Alt and using the arrow tool and dragging it out. Same for most of the Adobe programs. And that's now going to be our lower arm. And then I'm going to get the circle tool, and I'm going to use a light pink stroke with an even lighter fill, and just draw myself a hand and a little finger, okay? So I'm just going to drag over both of them to select it all, convert to symbol, and make this a movie clip, and okay, and that's going to be one side of my body, upper body that is. Okay, to make the other side, I've just selected the upper arm, hold down Alt and drag it out using the arrow tool, and I'm going to flip it over by going to Modify, Transform, Flip Horizontal, and let's move that into position now. Hold down Alt, drag it out, get the hand, hold down Alt, drag it out, Modify, Transform, and Flip Horizontal, and there's my other hand. And I'm just going to move these positions on the right, these arm positions, just to match it up a little bit. Doesn't matter, we're going to be doing some filling with this later anyway. Right, so that's the upper body. Then we're going to need the lower body, which is the same sort of structure really, upper leg, lower leg, and then the foot. But I'm going to use a different colour this time. I'll go for blue. So I use a dark blue line and a light blue fill. The other thing about this is, as we're moving them in, as we're turning them into movie clips, you could also use images as well. So if you wanted to make your whole body out of images, you can just import those images, probably as PNGs or as a straight Photoshop document that you've already prepared, and then turn those into movie clips and make it full of images as well. So it looks a bit more realistic than this. Although this is actually how I look. Right, so I'm going to do some legs. One, two, three, four. Fill it. Arrow tool. Bend it. Double click on it. Convert to symbol. Call it leg. And then I'm just going to duplicate it for the lower leg. Duplicate it again for that leg, duplicate it again for that leg, move it into position. Then for the feet, I'm going to have no stroke, so that's this little cross symbol here, this little, line symbol. Choose the paint bucket tool, get a black fill, and make 2 feet. I could have just easily drawn one and duplicated it, but I'll just do it this way. Third. For 2. Okay, and there's my body. Let me just neaten it all up a bit. Now you'll notice some bits of these are in front of other bits which they shouldn't be, like my legs are in front of my top half which they shouldn't be. And if you're using images, it will be pre-made images, it will be even more noticeable. Don't worry about that, that'll all get sorted out later on. Okay, so we've got the head layer, and here's the body layer. Actually, labelling this won't actually affect what we're going to do later on. You'll see something happen later to these layers that will change everything. So it doesn't really matter about labelling them. Right, let's start with the inverse kinematic tool, or the bone tool. Over here, we have the bone tool and the bind tool, and the bone tool is what we're looking at. So if I get the bone tool, and we're going to start with the neck. It's always a good idea to start from the neck because most of the pivot points come from the neck. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to draw out something connecting the neck to the arm. Now, do you see how, as I'm dragging it, underneath the bone tool, there's a little circle with a line through it, meaning no, you can't do it. As soon as you drag it near the other movie clip, and these movie clips overlapping, it will turn to a plus symbol. And as soon as that happens, I just want you to let go. And you can see it's now connected to this movie clip. And then, this is called the top, the head of the bone, and this is the tail of the bone. And I want you just to click on the tail of the bone again, drag, and there it turns to plus, and let go again. Click from the tail of this one to the hand, there it goes, and connect it there. Now if I get the arrow tool and have a look, you can see I've got some movement. There's some little random bits I've left out. Let's just delete those, make it neat. However, my body is doing something quite weird. It's a lovely effect though. See how smooth that animates, and almost like it has its own physics when it does that. There you go, see it catch up. But the body's actually moving with it, and with the inverse kinematics tool you can actually constrain some of the bones to either not move at all or restrict their movement on a degree angle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the head, and you can see it changes colour. This is the head of the bone, I mean not my actual head, the head of the bone. And if you look in the properties window here, you get a whole load of different properties for that actual bone. And if I click where it says enabled and it's got a little tick, if I untick that, you can now see that that joint doesn't move. And I'll give you a wave. There you go. Okay. Salute. Hello. Alright. So that's how you can constrain that bone. But there's also other weird things going on. Like, for instance, an arm can't actually double back on itself like this. So we're going to add some other constraints to this bone structure here on this arm. And first of all, let's start with this middle bone here, because that can bend far too far back like that. So if I click on that head joint there and I go to constrain and I tick constrain, you can now see you get this little angle here with the line saying where it is in the middle and how far round it can go. And this arch says it can go, well, that's probably about 45 degrees there. So if I move it up, I can't go beyond that, and down I can't go beyond that angle. So I probably want a bit more bend than that. So what I'm going to do is just straighten up there, click on it again, so I've got the options, and if I drag it out you can see it moving there, and I probably want 180 roughly, so 90 minimum and a maximum of 90 on that bone. Let's have a look at how that goes. Better, much better. Okay. And this arm here, which does the full 360, actually it's quite good like that, but I'm going to try and make it a little bit more realistic from the front. I'm going to give that one at the top a constraint as well, and let's go for about the same. There you go. Okay, you can see the hand's doubling back on itself as well. We'll have a look at that in 1 second. What we're going to look at first is the head, and I want you to pay special attention to this head layer up here, okay? This head hasn't been converted to a movie clip yet, so I'm going to right click on it, convert to a movie clip and call it head. Okay, that, and pay special attention to this head layer. And you can also see now that there's an armature layer appearing, and what's happening here is as we're adding parts of the body to it, those parts of the body are actually being moved from the frame they're on and the layer they're on up into this armature layer. And watch what happens to this head layer when we add it. So I'm going to get the bone tool, click on this neck area here and just move it up slightly, because we've already got the plus symbol for the head and I only want it to tilt there. And you notice the head's come forward, but the head layer in the timeline, it's actually disappeared on what was on the keyframe, and that's disappeared now and been moved up to the armature layer. So everything you add gets moved onto the armature layer, and I'll delete that layer now because it's no longer needed. So now I have my head, and I'm getting a bit excited there. Okay, but the head can't move any more than that, and here's the